In May 2016, a married couple from Austin, Texas, invested over $500,000 in the safest Everest expedition money could buy. Professional guides, bottled oxygen, full support. On summit day, one climber's oxygen saturation measured 58%. A guide recommended turning back. The response was a head shake and a finger pointed upward. What followed was a cascade of failures no amount of money could reverse. Lowell DeVries, known in business circles as a commercial real estate developer from Austin, and his wife Diane DeVries, age 49, co-owner of a residential design studio, joined the 2016 Mount Everest climbing season with a plan that set them apart from most hopefuls. Their expedition was not a do-it-yourself gamble, but a fully guided ascent, meaning every step from permits and route planning to oxygen logistics and base camp medical support was managed by a professional team. This included Sherpa assistance for carrying loads, a lead guide setting the pace, and a doctor at base camp monitoring vital signs with a pulse oximeter. Each climber was assigned staged oxygen bottles pre-placed at strategic points above the balcony. The couple's climb was part of the first full reopening of Everest since Nepal's devastating 2015 earthquake, a season that drew global attention for its uncertainty and risk. The cost of this support was extraordinary. While media headlines described their trip as an Everest attempt costing $200,000, later investigations revealed a total outlay closer to $570,000, a figure that covered guided support, oxygen systems, Sherpa staffing, and insurance. This discrepancy between the headline number and the documented expense stands unresolved in the public record and must be reconciled before any final accounting. What is clear is that few, if any, climbers that season spent more to stack the odds in their favor. Yet on Everest, even the most comprehensive support can only go so far. Their climbing resume included Kilimanjaro in Africa, Aconcagua in South America, and an attempt on Denali in Alaska that ended short of the summit. These are serious mountains. Kilimanjaro stands at 19,341 feet, Aconcagua at 22,838 feet, and Denali at 20,310 feet, but none reached the sustained extremes of Everest's upper slopes. On Denali, high winds and harsh weather forced a retreat, an experience that would linger in Lowell's memory. While these climbs show determination and a willingness to face risk, they do not expose a person to the relentless conditions above 8,000 meters. Above this altitude, known as the death zone, the body cannot recover from exertion, even with supplemental oxygen. Cells begin to die from lack of oxygen, and simple mistakes can become fatal. Every decision, from pacing to turning back, carries greater consequences the higher you go. The couple's previous expeditions did not require the same pace, stamina, or rapid judgment that Everest demands in its final stretch. Before setting foot on the mountain, Lowell and Diane made their attempt public. They announced their plans through Austin business media and linked the climb to a charity partnership. This brought their journey into the spotlight, adding a layer of public visibility to every step, especially to the possibility of turning back. With sponsors, press coverage, and a stated philanthropic goal, their progress was not just a private challenge but a matter of public record. Climbing Everest means more than just moving upward. It's a test of how the body adapts to thinner air and colder, drier conditions with every step. Acclimatization is the process where the body slowly adjusts to less oxygen, but there are early warning signs when that adjustment falters. Diane began to develop what's known as the Khumbu cough soon after reaching Camp 2. This cough isn't just a nuisance, it's a dry, hacking reaction to the cold, dry air that irritates the airways, and it can linger for days. Meanwhile, Lowell's resting oxygen saturation, measured by a pulse oximeter at camp, dropped to 58%. At sea level, healthy adults have a saturation between 95 and 100%. Even at high camps, most climbers aim to stay above 80%. Falling to 58% signals severe hypoxia, a level where decision-making and muscle control start to break down. The expedition log also recorded that above 24,000 feet, both climbers were moving well below the planned pace. This information was noted by the guides, but there's no record that either Lowell or Diane were told their pace had slipped so far off target. In an environment where speed, oxygen, and health are tightly linked, These signs were the first cracks in the plan, subtle but growing. May 19th and 20th offered the final chance to reach Everest's summit before the season closed. The forecast called for a narrow window, with a cyclone, known in some reports as Cyclone Rawanu, tracking to the south and threatening to sweep in. For guided teams, the plan was strict: summit by 11 a.m. or risk being caught above the death zone as the weather window slammed shut, likely by 3 p.m. That timeline wasn't just a formality, it protected the margin needed to descend before winds and cold intensified. At Camp 4, perched at 26,000 feet, the temperature dropped to minus 24 degrees Fahrenheit. The team set out on the evening of May 19th, moving into the darkness with the summit still hours away. By the time they reached the balcony at 27,600 feet, they were already 15 minutes behind schedule. The lead guide, watching the pace and the clock, quietly calculated that a safe return to Camp 4 was slipping out of reach. Near the south summit, at over 28,000 feet, the team came to a halt. The lead guide, watching the clock and the couple's pace, signaled a clear recommendation. It was time to turn back. In mountaineering, this moment is never just about the summit. Experienced climbers know the unwritten rule: reaching the top is optional, but returning safely is not. The guide's gesture was unmistakable. A firm shake of the head, then an arm raised, pointing down the slope. The message was not a command, but it carried the weight of expertise and responsibility. Lowell looked back at the guide, paused, and then shook his head in return. He pointed upward, toward the summit, and resumed climbing. No words were exchanged, and there is no record that Diane was consulted or asked for her own decision. She followed behind, step for step, with the guide and Sherpa team now divided between the obligation to respect a client's choice and the duty to protect their lives. On Everest, the line between guidance and authority is thin, and the consequences of crossing it can be fatal. The team continued upward, leaving behind the last opportunity for a safe retreat. The guide's log would later note the moment, not as a formal order refused, but as a critical recommendation set aside. This decision, made in silence and in full view of the world below, would define everything that happened next. Lowell reached the summit in the late morning, with Diane arriving just 14 minutes behind. The achievement, celebrated in summit photos and GPS logs, quickly gave way to a new reality. The hardest part was still ahead. Above the Hillary step, Diane's movements slowed. Her steps grew uncertain, and her balance faltered on the exposed ridge. Soon, she collapsed while clipped into a fixed line. Relying on this rope for support meant she could no longer descend on her own. A Sherpa clipped into her harness and began guiding her physically down the slope, step by step. Each meter gained on the descent now depended on direct assistance, and the margin for recovery narrowed with every minute that passed. At 28,400 feet, the team faced a critical shortage of supplemental oxygen, the bottled gas climbers rely on to make up for what the thin air can't provide. With wind gusts reaching 58 miles per hour, the lead guide halted the group and radioed base camp for help. He then descended alone, aiming for a cache, a supply of extra oxygen bottles stashed lower on the route for emergencies. The wind, however, was too strong. He was forced back, unable to reach the cache, stopping 300 feet above it. The failed retrieval left no margin for a safe descent. Radio calls continued as the situation grew more desperate. Radio transmissions from the mountain captured the final moments in stark detail. First came the report that Lowell had become unresponsive while clipped to the fixed line anchor at 28,400 feet. Soon after, Diane was described as breathing but unconscious. Minutes later, Sherpa team members radioed that both climbers were now completely unresponsive. The porter's radio failed at that altitude, and no further contact was established from their location. On May 21st, a recovery team found Lowell and Diane slumped against the same fixed-line anchor, with every oxygen bottle empty. The official postmortem listed high-altitude cerebral edema as the primary cause of death, a dangerous swelling of the brain triggered by severe altitude illness where low oxygen levels cause fluid to leak into brain tissue. The incident report confirmed that the guide's turnaround recommendation had been refused and clarified the site of the tragedy. Not at Camp 2, but at the fixed-line anchor high above, near 28,400 feet. Today, Everest's summit remains just as lethal, guided or not. Commercial expeditions now face growing scrutiny as record numbers risk everything for a brief victory above 8,000 meters. The real test isn't in reaching the top. It's in knowing when to turn back before the mountain decides for you.